Now, for more on the African migrant exodus, I'm joined by my colleagues, Salem Solomon and Jackson Mvunganyi. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Vincent.
This is something we're really passionate about.
Absolutely.
So first, just what are your thoughts on, let me start with Salem, on what our viewers have said?
You know, some of the viewers, most of the viewers actually pointed to war. The last comment that you saw is, lack of peace, lack of opportunities, educational opportunities, economic incentives in these countries. And so what we are seeing from early days in 2013, 2014, what we're seeing is a trend that this migration problem is going to grow, not decrease.
It's not decreasing. And we know that when you talk about all those issues, these are things that governments must provide, at least a great number of this, including structures and infrastructures that can enable people to survive.
Absolutely.
It's a huge responsibility,
Vincent.
right?
There's a bit of a leadership crisis on many parts of the continent where these people are leaving, are running away from. When we look at South Sudan, numbers are in that show over 1 million people left South Sudan because of the war that broke out over 2 years ago, the youngest country in the world. So there's a need for self-reflection by the leadership on the continent, by the African Union. What do we need to do to correct some of the things that are happening in our countries so that we curtail some of the movement of the people that are leaving our countries?
And regardless of what the leadership of the African Union says, we know that we haven't really heard any consistent, continuing conversation about how to stop this. Now, I thought I liked really a lot what Soneka from Zambia says, that even if the economy is bad, if there was peace and leaders were working hard to create opportunities, people will stay. And it reminded me in South Sudan, for example, people went back in when they had the belief and hope that there's going to be peace. Right. They didn't care that the country was very poor. So what does that make you say? Think about this.
I mean, there is, there's a big African diaspora. Sometimes, if you hear the conversation amongst Africa diaspora, you see there's like need to go back and contribute to their countries. But what's lingering in these issues is that African transparency, governance issues, it always revolves around governance issues. When you're talking about lack of employment or unemployment or struggling, people struggling to get jobs and looking for greener pastures outside, you're talking about governance issues at the end of the day. And so it's all about taking the accountability in these African leaders. 50+ countries in Africa right now are still having the same leaders that they've had for 30, 20, how many years? And so these are issues that need to be addressed. Governance issues are at the heart, at the core of these issues. And accountability is very important in this subject.
And Jackson, when we talk about leadership, one of the things that for me at least drives me nuts is that if you talk to all leaders, and we've interviewed quite a bunch of them, they'll tell you everything is okay. They are very, very satisfied with
it's okay
what's
for them
happening
because
in the
if
country.
they fall sick, they can take a private jet to Europe for medical treatment, right? The people can't afford those same luxuries. But let's stop framing this, and I'm talking about analysts who talk about this issue, framing it as if it's entirely an economic issue, like these people are running away from the continent because it's poor. No, it's not. There's a lot of resources, there's a lot of potential, people see it, but they just don't have the right environment to prosper.
It's like correct. The environment has been kind of set in a way that is conspiring against individual efforts to survive.
That's true.
And you see this across the continent. But we know that many young people have actually tried hard. Some have made it, but what are some of the obstacles that people have to face, say from Eritrea, even Ethiopia, where you're very familiar with?
Within those countries?
Yes.
I mean, we talked about, unemployment being used by many governments as the factor that drives people out. But, if conducive environments are available for, opportunities for young people to get jobs and things like that, this wouldn't be an issue. But also think about, having a system that's not, democratic systems, for instance. Lack of democratic systems affects a lot of African countries.
You live in fear.
Fear. You live in fear, and you're persecuted. There are wars and unstable situations in some places. Security issues are also, extremism and security issues are important to think about sometimes, because if families don't find stable conditions to live a simple life, they're not.
Vincent, you come from Kenya, right?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. How many Kenyans, for example, when you look at the numbers of people who have been rescued from these violent waters that, these terrible journeys that they have to take, how many Kenyans have you seen?
No, I have not seen any.
Exactly, because Kenya has enjoyed relative peace over the last couple of decades.
Yeah, so with peace, with a level of stability, people are resilient enough to struggle even in the face of really terrible
Right, they feel like they have a fighting chance.
But there is a question that we want to end with, perhaps. Will this end by African leaders burying their heads in the sand? Will this migration stop tomorrow, just like that?
I would say I don't want to sound pessimistic about this, but I've seen most of African leaders are blaming things on international community to take action, and we've seen money coming from European Union to countries like the Sudan, and you see all these reactions. But I don't think, unless African leadership takes responsibility, and unless people who are fleeing are going to be actively participating in the political process of their own countries, it will continue.
Jackson.
Absolutely, I agree with what you said, and we were having a conversation earlier today. For them to be able to tackle this issue head on would mean ultimately also it risks their jeopardizes their existence in power.
Yeah. It's like they have to stand in front of a mirror and look at their own faults and acknowledge them. But then denial is like the ongoing game, but no amount
denial
of that
sustains them in power.
But no amount of that will stop this crisis.
Deflect.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the key is that people want to see these leaders engaging in this, being honest, being patriotic enough, loving their people enough to make whatever sacrifices to make life livable on the continent.
Absolutely.
It's been nice hosting you once again.
Thank you.
And, thanks to both Jackson and Salem for coming.